Thank you for tuning in to the World Builder's Anvil, Season 2, Episode 12. Let's build some people.
Beeps. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the muck of Java and build. Hungry for peeps as always. My name is Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And, I've been watching a lot of Hannibal lately, so trying not to eat people, I am Michael Miller.
So serving this episode with some fava beans, it's Michael Miller.
Sorry.
Welcome back, people. This seems like a short time for you, or a long time. I don't know, but this has been quite the episode to record.
Yes, this episode has been a trial in the making. We've been plagued by technical difficulties for the past couple days.
This is
which is why you
episode 12, aka 2020.
Did we? Yeah, 2020 special. Am I posting the? Do you have a singular episode before this one?
We have two that have not been posted yet.
I know, but I'm saying, did they miss me last episode because I posted one with just you last episode? No, but we have two of you alone. Two posts because of our technical difficulties, or one?
No, we have none. This is episode 12. We're behind in posting things. So,
are we?
Yes.
We didn't post last week?
We did not post last week. Technical difficulties
on your end.
Yes.
I was going to say it wasn't because I didn't have it edited on time, correct? Okay, good. All right. I would have felt bad. All right. Well, welcome back. Either way.
when or wherever you hear this, hopefully it's still 2020. It's Michael and Jeffrey, or Mikey, as he prefers to be called.
Oh, stop it. All right. So we're going to continue with building this new open source world we've been talking about in a few episodes now. And Jeff's got something here, another perspective on the. I think you're talking another top-down perspective here, right?
Well, this is kind of what I do now when I flesh out originally now, and and I do use the old my map where people place these things, but under each of them I kind of go over sort of the what, where, who, when, how, why, for all of the topics, and sometimes it's not even very useful. But it is because sometimes it makes you think of things from a perspective that you didn't.
So you're going to be posting a mind map for everybody?
They can go to the show notes here or gardool.com/bonus. And it will take, I think it's a bonus. It's /bonus. And it'll go to new mind map. There's the old mind map as well too, which is still very valid. Any way you do this is right, as long as you just do it.
Yeah, the mind map is kind of a neat tool. I had not done one before. I'd seen ones that Jeff had shown me, and it was kind of difficult to follow just seeing a complete one. But when he did one with me in this software, it was really neat to see how, okay, it does really flow. So if you haven't ever used this tool before, maybe look up a video on somebody creating one. The software seems pretty simplistic.
The software is I think I use what's it called? Kaggle it or something like that. I have no clue what the hell it's even called. Coggle. I think it's called Coggle. I'll put a link to it in the show notes if I can remember.
But it's a neat way to organize things as opposed to just creating a list. Like, how sometimes you'll start writing up a list and you'll have different things on there that are related to other things on there. So you're like, well, do I list it under this thing or do I list it under this thing? The mind map creates a really neat way to kind of amalgamously organize your ideas, kind of the way they're sitting in your brain. So
have we ever talked about my post-it note method for brainstorming? That's kind of if I'm really brainstorming from the beginning, I really don't know. Maybe we'll do an episode on that at some point. That's a very useful tool I use for brainstorming as well. and it kind of flows in with all of these things. But my maps are the way I think. I kind of think in areas, and then I go deeper and I go deeper. That's the top down approach, right? I start with a big topic, and I kind of get down to the nitty gritty, and work specify someone to do the nitty gritty work for me. But hey, we all can't be supervisors all of the time. But yeah, so essentially for all of the topics, if you go back to the old mind map now, it's kind of related. I've kind of shifted stuff around where I think they belong now. It shifted a little bit just because of the way I like to think about stuff. And typically I wouldn't be going into race already. The first time we talked about geography, usually I would start off with the rules, but we covered enough of those, I think, in the initial let's build where, we'll ad hoc those if we come to them, if we have issues where we deviate. But for this one, you want to go back to one solo episode I did, which was 11, which was the currents and winds. Michael's favorite episode.
Episode 11. You're talking season 1.
Season 2.
I thought episode 11 was safeguarding Yoda.
No, that was 10.
Are you sure?
Yes. Yes.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe this is episode 13. We have no clue what's going on anymore. 2020 is not quite over. Okay, but so essentially when I talk
regardless of our nomenclature,
putting aside all those trivialities of names and labels that we get to make things easy for people, essentially in there I kind of talked about how the world's broken down, and around the equator you kind of have the weakest currents and winds normally, except as it shifts on its axis, you get like monsoons, and those do cause shifts and really powerful winds and rains in those areas. But outside of those periods of time, it's actually hard to travel, especially in this world. There isn't a lot of landmass around the equator. There's clusters of islands, but most of them are south of the equator or north of the equator. There's only really kind of one that, or maybe a couple that even get close. But essentially, the top left is kind of with the area we're looking at. But if you look right down the center, there's like 3 islands near the center. Those are along where the tectonic plates are shifting open and Earth is coming up. But essentially, from there over is kind of what we're looking at. And so most of these islands are going to belong to the invaders. And then one group of the islands is going to belong to the defenders. But what we don't know is who lives there. But what we also know is because there's so much water here, and there's not a lot of things to divert the wind, you have big, huge surface currents, that kind of go out. And there'll be some areas with smaller ones, but in general, big, huge currents to travel islands. So, and realistic, like the way that the Pacific was mapped out as people start going from the Samoan Islands out, and they went, they instead of going like right down below them into New Zealand, it took a really long time for them to get there because they kind of went all the way out a much further distance because that's the way the currents took them. And so they actually had to kind of come back and then populate those islands. So when you're island populating a species, you follow the winds, you follow the currents. So that's kind of the reason why I talked about that before this. And I'm thinking we have at least 2 races here, and the easiest thing to think of is and there will be at least one, hopefully, a humanoid style race, maybe a couple, I don't know, but the one thing we have to determine is, and we might have more races than we talked about at the beginning. For the area we're talking about, we really only need one race of sentient beings that largely dwell on land. Maybe they're amphibious. You like a frog where they kind of go in and out.
That's where you can sword fight with 2 hands, right?
Yes, Michael. That's where you can sword fight with 2 hands when you're amphibious.
Yeah,
I would try that out.
That's what I thought. That is one of my all-time favorite jokes from Perfect Strangers, if you remember that show.
I remember that show. I don't remember that line though. So.
There is a sequence where Balky is sword fighting somebody, And he's sword fighting, and he switches hands, kind of like the Princess Bride, and he's like, "I can fight with both hands. I'm amphibious."
Probably he should have won the fight at that point because the other person should have just started laughing.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
But yeah. So essentially, one of the things to keep in mind, though, when you're world building this way, is you don't need to know all of the answers. It's okay to come up with other stuff. You might have legends of things that might or might not be real as well. I'm thinking in general, there's something different in the Southern Hemisphere. Maybe it's another humanoid. I'm not sure. But there's something separate in the Southern Hemisphere. It's probably humanoid because the problem is if they become fish aquatics, they'll be able to travel with a lot less problem. They're still following the currents, but they're not limited like people who need air. To kind of follow up with the theme of the ocean is a highway, but also is a limiting highway based off of technology. I think we need whatever it is to, one, not have wings, and two, not have the ability to hold their breath underwater forever. Because either way, that kind of ruins our plans. But now you have to keep in mind, even those things that have wings, they follow wind currents. It's really hard to fly against a wind current.
Well, the other thing is even if they can,
why would they?
Navigate water? The water can still have some savage predators, making crafts a necessity.
Yes,
and if only to transport things, it's fine if I can swim. I could swim to an island, but eventually
you could have like a deep current kind of critter. So like if you get out off of the continental shelves, which you would have, they're smaller here, and a lot of them are submerged. But when you get off of those, maybe in the deep water, there is, that's one way you can limit it too. You get into the deep water, and there is, giant squid monsters that swallow up ships. Literally, in the case of this planet, potentially in ours, but much more aggressive and common in this planet. Irregardless, so
it's a water world, so there's lots of water.
It's definitely not a water world.
There's a lot of water, Jeff. So one might
maybe
call it
an ocean place. A place of oceans,
a world of water, a water world.
It's called definitely not water world.
Decidedly, I thought it was decidedly not water world.
Yeah, it's in my notes. I think somewhere. It's decidedly not water world. Really not water world is I think
definitely not.
Decidedly would have been the better world. But
I love water world.
Yes, there's lots of things that you love that are appropriate.
Have you watched your copy yet?
Not my copy. I've seen Waterworld more than enough for multiple copies of the thing, but I do actually have it right.
Is that it right there behind? Oh my God! I was going to ask you. I thought that was a video game back there. I can't because to the left, that's a picture of your son, right?
Like what's leaning against right there?
No, what's to the left of it?
This?
No, left. My left.
That's my son. Yes, that's Eric.
So so part of me thought maybe that was a family photo, but I can see some writing, so I was like, I'm not sure what that is. I cannot believe that right next to there on that shelf displayed is Waterworld. I couldn't tell from here.
Displayed is Waterworld. Yes.
So you guys can't see it, of course. So it's really only a joke for me, and it's been there for a while, and I didn't notice
since we've rearranged the room, and right. I have the thing
so
back
behind
there, yeah.
Jeff. He's got his bookshelf, and he's got all kinds of fun things on the bookshelf, and Waterworld is prominently displayed over his left shoulder.
Yes, ironically or not so ironically, leaning up against a globe of the world.
Look at you being clever in all in the ways that only you can. What am I looking at?
This is
that guard?
That is a cry cut machine. I figured out, Kristen and I figured out, mainly Kristen figured out how we could cut out the globe version from the podcast logo.
That is awesome.
So now I have to figure out how to actually make some piece of like wall art with that. But not that visual. That was more of a test, Ron.
I'm your guy.
But yeah, there we go. So essentially, I can take anything where I have a silhouette, and I can kind of create either a 3D image of it, or 3D object with it, or I can create. We can cut it out, and many things in this thing called a Cricut machine, which is insane, which is really fun if you like crafting, because essentially it's like a printer that cuts. So you just sort of like put SVG images into it, and it will cut stuff out. It's pretty cool. But now getting back to the people. Okay.
So
and think about how it works. But ironically, is like I just want to let us talking about like the different parts of the world. They're not all important. It's really sort of that northwestern or that would be the northwestern quadrant of. There's like a big island, and then there's 3 a little bit smaller islands off its east coast, and then there's an island due north, which I think is going to be where the resistance is held out. There's a couple really small islands, and I think that's another holdout, but it's far away, and they wouldn't have a constant contact back and forth with the other island of holdouts because of currents. So the current would go past the one island, which is where the invaders are next headed to, and they would it'd be easy to go from the defense island to that island, and that might be one of like the storylines of the world. Is you probably have a faction of people who are like, let's just leave, and another group of people like, where do we go? These guys, they'll just follow us down the current anyway, so we have to stand and fight. So is it a stand and fight or a run and flee scenario? If you look at the map, though, there's not much to the west of that for a long way. So yes. So it's a big not water world.
Do you want to make the aquatic peoples the aggressors or the defenders? And would you like
the ambidextrous people? You mean
the ambidextrous ones? Yes.
Yeah. We will make the ambidextrous people the defenders.
The defenders.
Because, fish rights.
I kind of like that. So do you want the other ones to be mammalian?
Yes, of course. The evil mammals.
Evil mammals.
Evil mammals out to just take over the world.
Because the only thing that I would argue about that is there's so much water. Wouldn't the amphibian people, wouldn't they have a larger population?
Well, one, I think I like the idea of if you get off the continental shelf and around that island, there's not a huge one. So there's area where they can go out in the water. They can fish up to the reef really well. But beyond that reef is exceptionally dangerous to be underwater. Due to giant eel monster, squid man things.
Krakens and leviathans galore.
Yeah. Now they're afraid of wood, so they don't bother ships. Actually, they would, but typically using the wind, you can propel yourself really, really fast. So the invaders have very fast open ocean craft. Viking like maybe.
Do you want to
Malaysian?
Do you want to have some kind of quality of the water in that maybe because of the nature of the water, it's a calmer ocean, and thus boat travel can be very faster than on Earth?
There's a lot less disruption.
That's
yeah. So I think that's definitely true. Now storms obviously really wreck that, but that's the way it is, right? Especially in ancient societies, storms are hell on sea. But it's something that you would have to learn to deal with, and you have to be able to see them and kind of make judgments very quickly on how to move. Ancient Polynesians were exceptional at this, and maybe the Vikings were pretty good at it too. But in general, most Romans lost entire military fleets to storms. So storms are an issue, but I think the crafts aren't going to be great warships, but they're great transport ships. So they're fast, they're light, they can get people to where they're going quick, which is kind of their tactic, I think, for the invaders. And so on that, we're going to have a mammalian race, and a more frog-like race, a gobbledygook race. They'll probably that. So like if you play like most video games, there's that race that's just sort of like, when you're running around the map in an MMO, goes blah, 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 blah. I think that's the way these guys sound.
I'm reminded of was his name Blippy in Star Fox?
I hope not. Because Blippy is the name of a
no.
YouTuber.
I know Blippy is your one of your son's favorite channels, but I want to say that the frog in Star Fox might have been named Blippy. Are you looking it up?
Of course I am.
I was gonna say you could probably get to it faster than I can. So I love the idea of an amphibian race. I love the idea of a frog-like race. I think that's very cool. Is our water world a salt water world?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So these frogs are fine to be in salt water.
So a lot of water,
obviously.
though. They're good in salt water, but remember, it's like alligators can cross salt water. They just don't stay and live in it.
Yeah.
And these guys, I don't think are gators. I think they're maybe more. Not turtles travel hardcore. I'm thinking froggies. Kind of. I'm really stuck on froggies. I think
I'm good with frogs. And they don't have to be, that's just like a basis, a way to have a conversation about it. I don't see these being quite, just the way earth frogs are,
No.
They could have
just the idea that, yeah.
They could have like 8 fingers. They could be, we could do all kinds of fun things with their biology.
Yeah. And, and the question is, do we go more tree frog? Do we go toadish maybe? But
what makes more sense for the world?
Probably frogs make more sense for the world, because but I don't know where they live. Those on an island that's volcanic, so it's rich in life. So maybe these are things that were once more in the ocean, and there's a variation, maybe a the monkey version of them that are still in the oceans. But this is a group that kind of came up and settled on land because of something, maybe the giant Leviathan creatures, and they've kind of become more accustomed to being land bound. So they need the water.
That makes me think like tropical frogs, like, some of your poisonous rainforest frogs. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Some of them could be very colorful. Some of them are very, very colorful.
Beltino is the frog. Beltino.
Does it have a nickname though? Because I know that's not what they called him.
I don't know, and I don't know if I can click anymore.
All right, now
there's a Slippy Toad.
Slippy Toad, that's it. So Blippy, Slippy, I was very close.
The guy I'm looking at is actually his father. So I'm on the wrong frog.
Slippy, I was very close. I was off by one.
I saw Slippy's
letter.
father, and I'm like, that must be who you're talking about, because that's very close to Blippy.
Blippy, Slippy, one letter.
Actually, I believe my son is watching Blippy Garbage Trucks right now.
Yeah,
I started that for him before I came in here because we were running very late. But okay, back to this here. So let's start going through the questions.
So these are questions that you guys want to be asking yourselves when you're making races in a new world, or just making races in the world you're working on. This is like, you're like, I have a place and I need a people there. So this is the stuff that you guys want to be thinking about.
This is where you want to start. This will not flesh them out. They won't be a done, ready to use race, but they'll give you enough information that you can go back to it later on and flesh it out if you need to. Because sometimes the framework, as you develop it, like we'll do the frog people here, but we won't do the mammalians at this point. But the thing to keep in mind is when you're doing this for reals, sorry, when you're really doing this, you want to get the idea of the framework first, then you have all of the pieces that you can kind of look at and go, okay, you can start seeing how they could touch each other. Like, why do the mammalians feel that they need to go after frogs? I don't know.
Tasty frog legs, obviously.
Yeah, it's like we go after fish that are really poisonous to eat, so you can't trust mammalians. But yes. So, and that's the other thing we'll have to think of at some point too, is I don't think monkeys make a great mammalian predator on this planet though. So
no, I wouldn't think so either. I think, maybe maybe it isn't mammalian. Maybe it's another reptile. Maybe it's a lizard, like something. I'm thinking
snakes,
which is a type of lizard.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of what do you call it? Like kimonos. Like that comes to mind.
Oh, like a hardcore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, we'll have to think about that one, folks.
Okay.
But let's work on the home base people right here.
Okay.
I like the idea of the frogs too, because the point is poison is about defense, and so they have poison, but it's about protecting themselves from being killed. So yay, I like the idea of a poisonous frog people with suicide bombing ants that live on the island too, just because we need suicide bombing ants.
Of course.
Not that it's related.
All right, let's get back to the questions though.
Okay, so where do they live? Well, we actually kind of covered that. If you go to episode 12 and go look straight up the map.
This is 12. I think you mean 11.
Yeah. No. Well, there'll be a map on this episode.
You're gonna put it here too. Okay.
Of the world. Up in the northwest, there's an island kind of by itself with another small island right off the tip. That's going to be where these guys live.
Now, are you gonna do you have a way to? Are you gonna be able to circle it or put an arrow there? So
yes,
okay,
yes, there'll be a circle there. That'll be one, and number 2 will be where the other people come from, and number 3 will be we don't really know what's there because it's the wrong way up the current.
Are you talking about a third race?
I don't know. It could be more of these people or more of the humans that have already got past there, or neither.
Are we putting humans on this planet?
Well, I'm calling them humans at this point.
Okay.
But, they're the apex predator species.
Oh, you're talking the
invaders.
Yeah, the invaders. I thought you said like this is where the frogs will be, this is where the invaders will be, and then this will be. I thought you made
another
reference
even
to a
more
third.
remote island in the chain, and we don't know what's there, and it's not in our frame, so it doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter yet. There's actually a lot of islands on this planet that we're not looking at yet.
Yeah.
So there are all kinds of possibilities.
And that's the neat thing when you get into this kind of world too. It's like, even on the same islands, you got very distinct things grow up. I mean, look like Papua New Guinea has like some of the most like number of species on anywhere in the world, and it's a little island. So that's the neat thing with islands and isolation, is it breeds weirdness. Hold on, I have a cat.
It's kind of like you and me. We just sit around and breed weirdness as best we can, come up with different things for different worlds, different creatures. So where do your new people live? Another good question, if you've already got that situated on the map, is who are they? Like, who are these people? What do they represent? What do they want as a culture?
Yeah, I think for them, this is a northern latitude thing, warm water coming at it, so it's warmer than it should be. Maybe like sort of an England style weather. What do any English toads want? Tea. They haven't found it yet, so they haven't discovered it, so they don't know they want that. They're going to need something else.
Well, warmer waters all on Earth also mean sharks. I don't know if
but I think
that type of predator.
When you follow the currents, that's the risk, and I think but typically there's the special reasons for existing, and for those, yes, they want to survive, they want to eat, they want to thrive, but who they really are as a people is they are I think they consider themselves the elevated ones, right? Like they are out of the water, so they came from the water, and they still have a huge connection to it, and it's important. Maybe they lay their eggs there. Well, they would have to, I guess, in the salt water. But they've risen above most life. I think they consider themselves superior because they have come forth from the giver of life and the giver of death, which is the ocean.
What kind of, and maybe I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I feel this kind of falls into, who are they? Like technologically, what are you seeing? Because I'm envisioning like maybe at best like mud huts, like,
Well, here's
basic
going back.
basic hand tools.
Going back here, it'd be easier for us to keep it strictly Stone Age, sort of technology.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, like, or maybe just past Stone Age, like not
and
quite getting into
that, but I think one of the things we wanted the aggressors to be weaker with technology. So maybe these guys have started to come out of it. Maybe there's like enough, like maybe they're like a Bronze Age kind of civilization, and the invaders will still be, essentially Stone Age, but with like the way they live doesn't matter that much, and that's the exploration of the stories that are interesting me with this, right?
See, the thing that I'm thinking about here, we might have to create a material that justifies that, because if you're talking a salt-based ocean and a creature that lives in and out of the water, then any of their equipment is getting wet, and anyone that lives, pardon me, and anybody that lives by the ocean, as Jeff and I are not far from it,
jumped straight to stainless steel.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You would need some form of material, because metal gets just destroyed down on the shore. I mean, you look at doorknobs and hinges, nails, screws, joist hangers. All of these things just get shredded if you're by the ocean. Being on a
small island, they probably don't have a huge mine either.
And that's the other thing is the resource of that material. So it gives us a challenge in creating a technologically advanced race when their availability to resources.
It could be with the magic too.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We might have to do a magic thing here, which I hate to use magic as a Swiss Army knife, but at the same time, it's hard to justify them having advanced weaponry and tools of a metal base if they're an aquatic based creature, because to work with metal you need a great deal of heat. So
well, luckily they live in a volcanic rich world.
Fair enough.
The things that grow islands here are two things: volcanoes, which make land very fertile, except when the lava's pouring over them.
Well, there's that part.
There's that minor.
There's that part. Except when it's extremely deadly to everything around it, it's very fertile to everything around it.
That's right. It gives and it takes away. But so the access to heat, I'm less worried about. This is a young world, very volcanically active.
Okay. I wasn't thinking that.
I was just saying that now.
Well, that's fine, but no, it makes perfect sense though. It's just that I hadn't considered that, but it's also okay. Well, now again, I'm gonna still get back to the material and how it responds to salt water. So
yeah, and that's something we need to resolve, but we don't need that here.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe it's titanium, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. To make titanium, you have to. It's an alloy, so. Let's not get into complicated metallurgy.
We don't need metallurgy right now.
Yeah, we need
to know that there's something that
makes them
out of the ocean, and I think they were partially forced, but there's something that really kept them here, and makes this the most important place in the world. This is the center. If you saw a map of the world drawn by them, this would be the center.
This would be the center. Yeah,
and so probably the volcano at it, and or the metal mine or something.
Yeah, so there's something that maybe it's a religious thing. Maybe it's a magical thing. It's definitely a religious thing. Okay.
Well, the reasoning.
Well, that's what I'm saying. For them, there is something about this particular island, something about this particular place that it means it's important to them, and that's why they stay, despite the fact that invaders keep wanting to come there. And obviously, if the invaders want to keep coming there, there's something there that the invaders want
invaders
also.
Want now too. That's right. I'm thinking probably off of that. When are they here? They've been here for a while, and this is not their first incursion with this species. I'm saying this species has actually come here before, and they used whatever they found on the island to repel them, beat their tushies back. It was a completely new, out of desperation kind of thing that was sprung out and used. But now the invaders know it's here.
Yeah.
And they really want whatever this thing is, because it was powerful enough to push back what typically would have overrun anything. So
I'm thinking a magic plant.
It could be magic plants. It could be magic wood, maybe like a very magic hardwood.
I could totally get behind that.
Yeah, I could. It makes the most logical sense. A lot of times in tropical forests, you get the really hardwoods.
Yeah,
too.
that's totally true.
You know, like a super ebony, an ebony, but it's actually hard to cut.
Yeah, and also, I mean, don't forget. I mean, if you're talking, volcanic activity, we could get into obsidian.
Yep.
So
well, I think obsidian is a very important material, but it's abundant. You know, you can get that.
Well, my point is between this incredibly dense wood and obsidian, you can have some really nasty weapons.
You probably get into some kind of Aztec style weapons.
Exactly.
I believe the Polynesians used obsidian inside of the sides of some of their weapons too. Besides that, the flaking of that, but that's actually the common thing here. But it's still important because it's still just a super useful thing in a Stone Age group. And even past, obsidian doesn't go away in its value once you discover other things because it's so impressive at what it does. And it looks pretty. So now
side benefit.
So when are they?
So when
they're at wave 2 of this. You know, so they've had time to establish and make this really their home. And the other people have had time to prepare to come back. And they're waiting for them to come back. and now in theory, it might have never really happened, but it just so happens that it's going to happen. So, one has been waiting to return. Each side sees itself as the hero and the other side is the villain because that's the way people's work. But yeah, they're sitting, they've had time to really make this their home. And so they've made it very frog friendly or toad friendly, I guess.
We'll say amphibian friendly, ambidextrous friendly.
We don't want to force them to be toads, I guess. And it's too soon in that. But I am kind of leaning in that kind of tree frog, maybe. Tree frog. Really,
tree frog is more where I'm leaning, but
I'm really leaning towards tree frogs now. Yeah. Okay, because it's going to be a naturally warmer than it should with volcanic islands and this is gonna be like a Hawaii kind of temperature here. It's a little farther north, but we're not counting. Maybe the sun's hotter. Who cares? Now, how do they live? I think they live off the land. It's a lush place between the reefs that kind of surround their couple islands, and their and the volcanic eruptions that don't destroy them. They have a very, very lush environment, so they could support hunter-gatherer societies to a very dense point. That's the reason, like, you go to Hawaii, it really hadn't centralized into a civilization because there was enough food and resources that people were looking for that they weren't forced to. People don't just start, settling down and farming because they want to. There's reasons that just it becomes more important than moving around because it's a lot more boring lifestyle.
How do you feel about them potentially developing a way to control where and how the volcano erupts? Like maybe they carve out a spot so that they know, okay, it'd be better because we're settling the village over here, but if we dig down to a certain point, then the mountain will be weaker on that side. So when an eruption comes, it's going to break over there, and that'll send the lava to the other side of the island. It will build that up, but it won't ruin our village. Like, how do you feel about that concept? Them being that smart and them going to an effort
or
like
coming
that?
up with a way. Let's do that because I don't know enough about how volcanic islands come about. I do know that there are places that that are safe and that are safer, just because you can see where the fresh lava goes. Yeah. But I like the idea of them sitting there and they're taking control of their environment. They like a little bit more water. They have jacuzzis in every house. So they have to protect
like a hot spring sort of thing.
Exactly. So
maybe not necessarily spring, but exactly what you're saying. Like they've set it up so they're taking advantage of the heat. They've whether that is they have found a spot that is naturally warm or whether they've done something to cultivate the warmth.
Yeah.
And then bring water there.
Maybe they found some way to harness geothermal energy to power their civilization. Good God, they're like post-industrial.
maybe with some things.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing with technology. It's not, a straight line where when you're at the Stone Age, you have all of these technologies and nothing more until you hit the day where you have your birthday to the Iron Age. But
quick aside on I don't know why this came to mind because we were just talking about volcanoes and knowing how they work and whatever. I don't know what I was reading something about volcanoes a little while ago, and it was talking about like accidents that people have had around volcanoes and doing things, and there was I forget, I don't know who it was, but they were flying over a volcano to get a better look at it, and it was active, and they were flying over it in a helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
Helicopter could take the heat, except for the blades.
I should be laughing. Yeah.
The blades melted, and the chopper plummeted into an
ironically,
volcano.
It doesn't work very good that way, I'm assuming, huh? Without the blades, it doesn't fly very good.
No. But can you imagine how horrible that must have been? Like,
well, especially it's like, do you just not realize until maybe like, it's a little jumpy because of all of the thermal activity?
I mean, I guess
your blades melted.
Well,
obviously they couldn't figure it out soon enough, and
right, and maybe
what they were doing. So
yeah, I don't know.
That's kind of we did the math on everything except for the thing that really mattered.
Yeah,
but you don't really know it's the thing that really matters until it is the thing that really matters. That's why they're accidents. Now the question is, why do they exist?
That's why I always. Okay, I was gonna get into a lava discussion, but go ahead. So the next one, why do they exist?
Yeah, so this is obvious, and we're talking about Michael. It's not an existential question by any stretch of the imagination. Why are they here? We want a race of people here, and they could be the same race, but we just don't want them to be. I like the idea of the tree frog people defending against something else, and the idea is we need them here as something sort of carved into this island, we'll say, and the carving of the island, or the carving of the ideas, make them defenders by nature, right? Like the idea that they are a frog that uses poison to help protect themselves. They're defensive in nature of where they live. And so some of the things that driven them here, we want all of these things in place to make them really focused on defense and defending their territory against an aggressor that's going to be much more populous in nature. So I think the idea is interesting. And they're here because they serve the purpose of creating essentially a protagonist race in this circumstance. It could be a culture, but that's just not the way we've decided to go.
I'm thinking with this whole defense concept, and if we're going to do the whole, they have like a poisonous skin sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking that doesn't develop until they're of a certain age, thus making their young very vulnerable and in need of protection, but also very tasty to lots of predators.
Well, I like that. Yeah.
So they have to. So the older ones are more dangerous, and thus those ones are very protective of the young. Mm-hmm. And that kind of feeds into in nature, like, when frogs spawn or when fish spawn, they make a ton of young, and a lot of them don't make it.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like the idea that the young they have to go in the ocean to plant their young, which puts them at risk.
Mm-hmm. And maybe these, I keep going with my mind. I'm building visuals in my mind, and I keep going back to like a, what do you call it? A kimono dragon style humanoid. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe they're poisonous too, but they can't handle the frog poison. Like the frogs could.
Or maybe the idea is they're not poisonous. They have a venom. Maybe there's a strain of them that are immune to the poisons. But in general, it's through a complicated preparation to prepare their food.
Where I was headed is that like these reptiles have been doing good conquering other islands, and they're
they have a natural weakness versus this race.
Well, for some reason, exactly. Like they're like most other things we come across, we just bite them and they die because, we're pretty deadly
We're
ourselves.
big, strong,
But when they
fast.
bite these frogs are like, yeah, you're gonna die now.
Yeah.
Like that's not gonna hurt me, other than you bit me.
Yeah, that's a very interesting concept, because you're creating this point where both of these species will change forever. With the more contact they have with each other, it forces them to change. And like I said, maybe these people have even picked up technology like weapons, because their natural weapons are so effective normally.
That's what
Yeah.
that feeds into them being less advanced than the frogs.
Or at least in that area, right? Because we don't need to develop weapons. We have these really powerful mouths, and we can basically just eat crap.
Yeah.
And you are our food. Oh wait, I keep dying when I try to eat you. So yeah.
Except your children.
So
I don't get it. The small ones taste great, but the big ones, I don't understand.
Trying to create our baby Yoda moment already. Okay.
I wasn't even thinking about it that way, but I think maybe there's a subconscious influence happening here.
Yeah. Eating the frogs. Okay. Now,
that's right. Those were frog people too. I totally forgot.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We might have to change this. Did we do this on purpose originally? Did we? No. It's just happening organically.
This is where I just thought about this, especially when we talking about eating people. I'm like, this is all. But this is the life
just talked
of fiction.
about it like 2-3 episodes ago.
But the thing is, this is the way fiction works, though, and maybe there's some internal thing that brought us to that point.
Maybe,
but really, for me, it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with the idea, and then and the idea of the wood being the special material makes sense. And there's a special frog wood thing in rainforest.
Yep.
So, yes. So, hey, that's the way fiction works. Is
I like it.
Who says at some level there might be some connection that inspired it, but the point is, Baby Yoda and all of their concepts are completely derivative. Everything probably that since we've started writing stuff down have already been derivative, because the stories existed before then. So it's about your details that make them original.
So the last thing you have here is once per race. So what do you mean by that?
So you go through all of those questions. So if you have multiple races, like we have our maybe not mammalian on a definitely not water world race, you would go through these questions for them as well too. So for each race.
When you say once per race, you mean once per each race go through all of these questions.
Yep.
Okay. So
like I said, you won't come out with all the things. You just want the framework of how they are going to work. And so later on, when you have enough of your frame that you can really go in deep and world build what you need, you have and know the building blocks. Unlike us who are just saying it out loud, you would want to actually record it somewhere.
Yeah, write it down, type it up. So to recap the questions, and again, working from a framework perspective, this is going to be like, there's a people over in this corner of your world, there's a people in this corner of the world. Your story or whatever your project is, maybe it's not going to go to that place yet, so you don't need to spend a lot of this is a time management tool, so you don't need to spend a ton of time working on that until you need to use it. Once you need to use it, you need to go over there and flesh it out, do that, but just do this. So these are the questions.
In theory,
I was just going to recap the questions. You're killing me.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. So
you get to the theory in a second. So you take it and say, okay, where do they live? Who are they as a culture? What time period are they in? And you could also, in that question, you could say when are they? But you could also, with that question, couple it with like, what's their technological level? And then how do they live? Why do they exist? Now, this repeating, Jeff, not existentially, but like, why do you want a culture there? Why do you want a people there? Like, just say there's a reason, and this is the reason, and that's why I want them there. So it can't just be like, oh, well, there's space over there, so there should be a culture there. I mean, it could be, but
in this world, you don't need that even.
Yeah. Like basically, I can't stress enough how much the kind of tools that we develop for you guys is mostly time management. It's all about you finishing your project, or at least covering ground on it. So you don't have to build everything to have a very fleshed out, believable world. And we don't want you to get caught in the trap of overbuilding and not completing a project or not writing that story or getting something. You know what I mean? So there might be a frog people in the corner of your world. You've always wanted that. Sure. Okay. So there's frog people in the corner of your world, but you don't necessarily have to build out 5,000 years of history for that culture if you're never going to go there. You could just make a reference and have it just be that. And then if you ever decide to take a story there, then you can flesh it out. That's why we talk about frames.
Yeah,
and if those frog people in the corner of your world are not in your frame, you don't need to flesh them out. Not yet.
And even with the invaders with this world, you need to know them in two ways. You need to know the idea, since this isn't the first contact. Will be the second. This will be like the second Persian invasion of Greece, right? They know of them, but at the beginning, any information the readers or players would learn about this other race is through the eyes of the frog people, not the reality of who they are. You'll want an idea of who they are so you can build up the legends around them, but you do not need to know the facts of who they are. And it's quite reasonable to suspect that there are misconceptions and errors in what you're saying up front. And some people would later on call that, oh, that's an error in your world building. It's not, even if it's accidental, because you can always write it off to there was a contact before. You hear from race A about race B, or culture A from culture B, whatever it is. So you don't really know the truth. You know someone's perspective that is being shared with you, not the reality of it. So the thing is, if you would start at some point, let's say 20 years before the war of the second invasion, you don't even need the other race fleshed out yet. Not until you introduce them. So just kind of reinforcing what Michael's saying there, because he's right for once, because he's saying what I think.
You do know you've said that to me more than once, right?
Yeah, but it's only when you agree with me. That's the only time you're actually right.
All right. So Jeff's going to take a sip of water before he reads the world building task.
Yes. The world building task today is to go bring forth some fictional life. My voice is holding up really good here.
I love that I put you on the spot when you can't talk.
Yeah.
Go bring forth some fictional life. And the reason I wanted you to read it is just because I want you to define how you mean it.
Yeah. So go make up some fictional life.
Some stuff.
That's right. Some schnizzle.
So under real world task, you have MVP or nothing. I have no idea what you mean with that.
Yeah, this is a new thing that's been twirling through my head. Minimum viable planning.
Minimum viable planning or nothing.
Or nothing, or just don't do it. Just don't waste your time.
So what do you mean by minimal viable planning?
So it's the idea I'm working on where it's like whenever you want to do something, especially something that's newer, you need a minimum viable plan to do it. If you go a maximal plan, you'll never start.
Because it's too
because you'll spend your life planning. And you'll spend you'll create this giant waterfall project for yourself, and then you'll sit there and look at the 9 billion steps you've just made and go, oh crap, I don't know where do I start? There's too much to do. I'm gonna go play Cyberpunk 2077. Which probably I'm gonna do anyway. But you started it? I started it, yes. I ended up picking up for my old Xbox.
Let's talk about that in a minute. Yeah. Okay, so minimum viable plan or nothing. So real world task is to make a minimum viable plan for anything?
Things that you want to do.
Yeah. Things that you want to do.
It could be like, how am I going to spend time with my family next month? And the better you are at doing it, the smaller amount of information you need to go into it. And you shouldn't be wasting your time there because there's other things that you need to do in your life that you're going to need a little bit more planning for. Spend the time where you need it on the planning enough to just keep moving.
I like that. Keep moving. All right, guys.
Now I'm going to go sit down and play a video game. See you later.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.garduel.com.
That's GARDUEL.com. dul.com.
Now strike while the myth was hot.